I used to work at a place that rhymes with Pizza Hut and the managers there were real cheapskates. There was this nice old man that would come in every Sunday and order a triple extra cheese pizza, and while they charged him for the 3x cheese, they would forbid us from ever actually putting that much cheese on a pizza because apparently cheese in the pizza selling world is akin to gold. So instead of 3x extra cheese he would really be getting what the instructions would qualify as barely enough for a regular cheese pizza. On the day my 2 weeks notice ended, the old guy just happened to be my last order, so I went into the walk-in and grabbed an entire box of cheese. Proceeded to dump the entire thing onto his pizza and tossed it into oven. It was stacked so high that it couldn't even fit into it and half of it was scraped off. Anyways, the look on the old guy's face when he saw me do this made it all worth it. Imagine pure excitement. Needless to say, I didn't put the correct phone number down for future job references. There was a UPS strike in the 90s and I was employed by them in high school as a sorter. Blockbuster Video at the time had this mail order deal where you get a VHS tape and bags of popcorn. Like a pro to Netflix thing, I guess. Anyway, all these boxes full of microwave popcorn and VHS tapes would slide down the belt and about half of the popcorn bags would explode or break. After about an hour there was popcorn dust all over. I asked my boss for a mask, and he said that they didn't have any. Some of the drivers walked by wearing masks, and I followed them and found a full cabinet full of masks. I confronted my boss, and he was like, the masks are for drivers only. So I went back to the sorting area and just stopped working. I just stood there. The belts were backing up with these boxes of popcorn and they would burst and clouds of powdered popcorn butter would fill the air. I waited about 45 minutes before the belt shut off. I walked out through a haze of popcorn dust, with alarms blaring. People running everywhere trying to figure out what was going on. A lot of people didn't get their VHS tapes that week. A guy from my work years ago came in high and the boss figured it out. She brought him into the office to fire him and with a cop to escort him out for his final stand. He came real close to her face and said, in a world of darkness, where you carried the only light, I still wouldn't follow you, and left. My boss was a cunt. Had me on a disciplinary for something that wasn't my fault, and had my bonus taken off me. So I found a new job. Threw out your Q2 $500 worth of stock as technically the food hadn't been stored away correctly. Went above my boss and got head office's backing. Then handed my notice in, knowing that I'd FK'd his bonus up too. Fuck that guy. I knew someone who worked in a really shitty call center. His boss never had time for anyone. When he went to tell his boss that he was leaving, the boss waved him out of the room as he was on a call. So he wrote "I quit" on a post-it note, stuck it on the boss's screen and just walked out. I was working for Argos as a Christmas job while studying. After a while it was becoming too much as I had to stay in work until deliveries were unpacked. This meant that some days I was leaving for college at 8:30 am and not getting home until 1 am that night. One night it was a particularly large delivery and it was getting very late with no end in sight. I decided I'd had enough and told the supervisor I was finished. Didn't want to do the job anymore and wanted to go home. He rejected this and said that I was going nowhere until the delivery was unpacked. I stood in front of him and repeated that I quit, therefore I don't care about the delivery. Completing my studies was more important to me than earning a bit of extra cash. He still said I was going nowhere and refused to unlock the door to let me out. Despite feeling I had a case for false imprisonment, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I ran out the fire escape door and down the street, never to return. I'll always remember the sound of the fire escape door making a big doong as it hit the metal railings, and I made my escape to freedom. Someone at my previous workplace, a huge grocery store in a large mall, went to the PA system we used to issue messages to the whole mall, and said something along the lines of, "Dear customers, managers and co-workers, I f***ing quit," and then proceeded to leave. I wrote a respectful letter thanking them for the opportunity and all they've taught me. The first letter of every sentence spelled out "fuck, boss." Nobody noticed. Worked at Arby's. When I planned to quit, I typed up a formal letter of resignation and put it in an envelope. I walked in and handed my boss the envelope and she said, "Are you quitting?" I stammered no. As I walked backwards out the door and booked it out of there. I wasn't very good with confrontation back then. Wrote a normal letter of resignation before I got in the shower one morning. NBD. Got into the office and was straight ignored by management. Oh well. Told you when my last day was. Fast forward 3 days, they pull me into a conference room to ask what it would take to keep me. I say nothing but don't want to ruin them. Sole IT manager for a staff of 70 and would be willing to consult part-time. They liked that idea and said they'd be willing to pay me my current hourly as a consultant. I was prepared for this and told them that wasn't what I said. I said that I would consult and my consulting rate was $200 HR. They were flabbergasted and insulted. I was making about $18 HR salary. They thought it was insane even though they'd pay a consulting firm $600 HR when I was on vacation. Needless to say, having planned to quit, it was no skin off my back and laughed about it. They didn't take kindly to me laughing about their anger and told me to pack my shit. I did so. Got an extra 10 days vacation paid out of it. My boss was never in the office and wasn't even there for me to turn in my resignation. So I took a video of me dancing on his desk and singing about how he's never there and sent it to his boss. It's the middle of the lunch rush at the restaurant. It's a gorgeous day but the porch is closed. So myself and this poor middle-aged waitress are taking everyone who expected to sit outside into our room. We're providing tea service because usually there are 5 servers for this many people. Not 2. I ask the manager if she wouldn't mind calling people in to open up the porch, which is where all of these people are expecting to sit. She goes off on me. "Are you f***ing kidding me?" I exclaim. "You just swore at a manager. You're fired." I was going to be back at college in 2 weeks, so I really didn't give a fuck. The thing is, she had to cash me out first. So for those 10 minutes I quietly cussed her out in front of everyone until she started screaming her head off in the middle of the restaurant. She was fired a couple weeks later. I had a part-time student job in college as music director in a small church. Everything was fine until they hired a new minister who preached long, annoying sermons in which he either condemned gay people or talk about the evils of birth control. Double quote. I finally couldn't stand it anymore and told him, as I handed in my 2-week notice, that his 1-hour harangues reached the point where the ear can absorb only as much as the rear can endure. Double quote. First job when I was 15 for a discount clothing brand store. Head manager was the aunt of our store manager who was 19. Our store manager did nothing most of the time and used to chat to her boyfriend and friends loudly on the store phone, much to the annoyance of everybody. One night it's come closing. We are grabbing our coats and getting ready to leave after a really busy day and the store manager storms in, telling us how she's slow at the shutters and won't let us leave until we have helped her finish the one job she had all day to do cause her aunt is doing a surprise inspection in the morning. Everyone is pissed. Esp the people who have had to watch her do literally nothing all day. She turns spiteful, threatening to delay our pays, dock our wages etc etc. All bullshit. For one woman it was the last straw. She had a kid to pick up from a club, so she waited till she left us alone to work, walked up to the shutters and pulled them up manually by hand. All of us crawled out to freedom. We left her a note saying good luck explaining to your aunt why 4 people just quit. Double quote. First job. Boss was a douche that liked to sexually harass the girls. Most girls were my friends. Got screamed at for something I didn't do. Proceeded to climb on roof. Dropped throw and pissed from roof onto his brand new Mustang. I hope you're reading this. FCKU. Dave. Worked in the cinema as a teenager. Came in late for work after they changed my schedule during my days off and didn't think to mention it to me. Boss lost it and started shouting at me. As far as I'm concerned, if you need to shout I ain't listening. So let her rant away for a good 15 minutes while I was at my locker clearing it out. When it finally clicked that I wasn't listening or getting ready to work, she stopped and asked what I'm doing. I said going to see Lotta with the lads who've just finished, as I'm doing nothing else with my evening. May go for a pint after. What's your plans? I worked overnights at a gas station through college. After being scheduled to work my third Christmas in a row. On Christmas morning, I gave my boss a card that said I quit. Double quote. I used to work in invoicing. My boss was a massive, micromanaging bitch. The type that has literally nothing better to do than nitpick because they, for some reason, think that that's how you properly manage. This went on for about 2 years before I'd had it. I took a big old dump in the one bathroom in our office. Total of about 6 people that worked there. Precariously placed my boss's business card on the massive log. And then left it there in the toilet before going to her desk and quitting right then and there. She tried to come back at me with some spiteful shit. But I shut her down. Telling her that she's a shitty boss and she's the sole reason that I'm quitting this job. Best day ever. Best dump ever too. Now that I think of it. HM. When I was in high school, I worked for Best Buy as a cashier. I wasn't respected as an employee and found a better opportunity at another company. So I went to work in my pajamas on Black Friday. And my boss looked at me in shock and said, "You need to change. You can't come to work looking like this." I then told her I was leaving and only came to get my paycheck. I wish I can express the look on her face and everyone else that was working that day. It was such a feeling of relief. It also was funny showing up in my pajamas, haha. I posted this not that long ago, but it fits here. Worked in a video store when there was such a thing. My co-worker showed up very high. He was also about 6 feet 3 inches and 140 pounds. So he stood out in a crowd to begin with. Anyway, he came in for a 4-hour shift. Stood in the middle of our bank of checkout registers. And just ate chips. Like 6 bags of chips back to back. And he ate them slow. And savored the shitty out of each bite. The whole time he had zero facial expression. Think of the dull stare of a chewing dairy cow. After about 3 hours he calmly turns to me and says, "I can't do this anymore." Gently sets down his bag of chips. And walks out the door. We never saw him in the store again. Not my story. But one a co-worker told me. The guy who it turned out I had replaced knew he was going to be fired and wanted to quit ahead of time in style. So he enlisted the help of the guy who told the story. And spent the entire day fashioning a suit of Spartan armor out of cardboard boxes in the back. Then, right as they were closing, because he was still a decent guy and didn't want to make a scene, he donned his armor. Walked up to the account manager. Saluted with his cardboard sword. And with a straight face asked permission to leave your employment to go on campaign. Sir. Without waiting for a reply. He saluted again and walked out. I would have thought some details were embellished. But the guy showed me the video. Not me. But a great story. One guy I worked with hired a mariachi band to follow him into our boss's office. Unfortunately for him, the boss was on vacation, so he ended up quitting over the phone and was so pissed he spent the $300 on the band. At 16 I worked at a Dairy Queen brazier in Texas. My manager was a jerk. One night, I sliced a good chunk of my thumb off because they did not have the proper safety equipment. After being out of work for 3 weeks, I returned to work. My thumb was still pretty screwed up. But I was trying. My manager kept riding my ass. Telling me I had to move faster. I was the only short order cook. When I saw 3 Greyhound buses pull up, I knew I was in trouble. She came back into the kitchen and said if I didn't move fast for these buses she'd find someone who would. That was the last straw. I knew no one in the entire restaurant could cook. So I took her up on her threat and simply walked out the back door. She flipped me off as I drove away. My friends told me they hardly got any orders out and the buses left since they couldn't get the food out. I felt bad for the people on the buses, but was sick of being berated by management. During my exit interview I told HR the real reason I was leaving was due to the quality of the office chairs. I said they were an eyesore, uncomfortable, and made me ashamed to come to work and resulted in subpar job satisfaction. 2 weeks later I was told by previous co-workers everyone got brand new, top of the line office chairs. 17-year-old me has just finished college and was planning to go to uni. I had a job in top styles. This was my first job, so I usually got all the overtime as I wanted to impress. The manager was a sleazy gay guy who would try to hit on me as he knew it made me uncomfortable. I had an open day for the uni I wanted to go to. Him being the dickhead, he has decided to book me in for a day shift all day despite me booking the day off for the open day. He said that if I didn't turn up for work that day he would cut my hours. I thought I'd wait until the shop shut. Scribbled on a piece of paper that I quit my job and posted it through the letterbox. The funny part was that before I left I locked the bathroom door and took the key with me. No spares were ever cut as the manager thought this was a good idea. Hope he shat his pants. I worked at this shitty sandwich shop. Actually the food was decent. The owners were assholes. I'd worked in food service before and had always had aprons provided and washed by the business. They made me wash one that they gave me. It was weird. They were annoyingly cheap. I called and told them I was quitting as I had moved on. Didn't give 2 weeks because I knew they'd cut my hours and already had a new job, and they asked for the hat they gave me back. I had worked there a year and am kinda sweaty. It was gross and I felt bad for someone else wearing it. So I shat in it. Put it in a bag and just left it on a table during the lunch rush. Told them I dropped it off in the restaurant. Edit. Grammar see below. Edit 2. Apparently the grammar was fine. I worked as a mechanic at Pep Boys several years ago. While I worked there, some of us discovered that if the drainage pipe in the shop were pressurized, the toilet would shoot water out of the bowl. The service manager at my store was a piece of shit. The day that I quit I waited until he went into the bathroom to take a dump. I filled up a cheater, a device used to seat a tire onto a wheel, and released about 200 C all at once into the drainage pipe. The toilet f-king exploded. The manager screamed, and then comes storming out of the bathroom covered in shit. My wife worked for a certain chain coffee shop a few years back. She got another job, so requested reduced hours. This didn't happen for 3 straight weeks. During that 3rd week, she had a soccer mom from hell try to get her attention by throwing f-king snowballs at her through the drive-through window. My wife then stopped what she was doing and tossed the soccer mom's iced tea at her, which exploded everywhere, and slammed the window. 5 minutes later she had written her letter of resignation, with the only things she could find: a purple crayon and a sticky note. I managed to find a telemarketing job as one of my first jobs. It sucked and we were treated like animals, but it was close enough that I could walk there from home. I only intended to stay long enough to afford a car. One day, I realized that I had reached my set dollar amount for a car purchase. As a joke, I strayed as far from the sales pitch as possible. I changed my greeting to things like "Hey" or "Sup." I impersonated celebrity voices. People stopped working around me. They just listened in shock. But it completely backfired. It was my highest day of sales ever. I sold 10 times my average. The pit boss was bewildered, which is why I wasn't fired right away. He listened in on all my calls that day. He begged me to stay, but I was out. I made a comment about seeing shoplifting at Sears yesterday. When I left there I hid the 250/300 business cards I had left in freezers, taped to the back of TVs, up inside the ceiling. I was witness to a classic quit job. Was out a local pizza place with my family. It was around 6ish and the place was packed with families and other patrons, mainly HS kids, for the dinner rush. All of a sudden this kid comes running out from behind the counter where you get your food. He whips off his shirt and shorts and jumps on a table in front of a packed restaurant and exclaims very loudly, "I'm quitting because the manager that runs this place is a total asshole and won't give me a day off." Oh yeah. I pissed in the pizza sauce too. Thank you. Have a good night. And grabbed his clothes. Dismounted and then ran out the door. It was dead quiet for about 5 minutes. Then the manager came out and apologized, and 10 minutes later, people went back to their meals. Still remember that like it happened yesterday. I was working for Sam's Club right out of high school as a cashier. I was always in the top 3 for accuracy and speed. I had been wanting to move out of center section. The front end manager would ask me to help train a couple of new cashiers, then I could move. When I would get done with training, then something else will come up for a reason I couldn't go. I got fed up with it and waited until the busiest Sunday in the store's history and quit right after my lunch break. Just handed my best until keys to her and said I quit. Bye. My job at Chick-fil-A had a tradition of pieing people in the face on their last day. Now I was the manager and didn't trust the kids not to pie me when taking a complaint or during a rush or something. So I promised them if they'd wait until close in the parking lot, and if they got done cleaning on time, we'd do something special. So I present to you the pie gauntlet. I worked for a restaurant that was set to cater a music festival I wanted to attend badly. I had actually been the catering assistant until they no notice posted that job was available for anyone. So I held out hope I'd get to go and cater the festival and quit after. Despite this, I was told I'd have to hold down the restaurant and could not go. Period. I put in a 6-day notice and found their booth and waved and said hi while peeking on acid. I did that every single day of the festival. When I left college, I got a job. I worked as a salesman. I hated everything about it, but needed the money. On the day I got accepted for my new job, I grabbed the tannoid and screamed as loud as I could, "Fuck you all." I then proceeded to walk backwards out of the shop with both middle fingers up at the manager. Best day of my life, but I'll never do it again. Worked for a difficult attorney for 10 years. For most of that time, we got along very well. To the point that the other admins were like, "How do you do it?" Had a big falling out. BC, he said I slighted his wife once on a random visit she made to the office while he was out. It did not go down like that at all. Took me 2 years to find another good paying job. But during that time I still worked all the OT I could get, single mom, etc. etc. One Sunday I worked 13 hours to meet a deadline for a major client. While there, my daughter called to tell me a job I had interviewed for had called. And I got it. Monday morning when I came in, he called me into his office to thank me for working all day Sunday. And I said thanks, but I am leaving. Priceless. I worked at a video store this past year. At the beginning of summer, my store got a new manager, which really sucked for me because me and my old manager had become good friends. Anyway, this new manager was complete ass at her job. It didn't help that we were understaffed. She had me working 40 hours weeks. The shifts were shorter, so I would have to come in every single day. Keep in mind this is summertime and I am not able to do anything but work. We had basic assignments for opening the store and closing. The manager always opened and I always closed. However, each shift has a certain list of responsibilities that have to get done, or else the district manager would get on your dick. My manager left me with her work every single shift I went in. Eventually I got sick of working and decided I was going to quit. So I went in acting like I was about to take her shift. As she was leaving, I beat her to the door and simply told her I quit. Probably not the most badass example in this thread, but it was a big deal for me. I worked in a shitty fabrication shop. Got cheated on money. Put in unsafe situations. Watched every OSHA law violated. And plenty more. I was the only welder they trusted to weld anything complicated or very critical. I was helping train a younger guy and I told him to hurry up as I was quitting at lunch break. I walked into the break room with the supervisor, not believing I was gonna quit. After they left, I clocked out and under work completed section of the time card I wrote dragged up. They called me Monday begging me to come back. I didn't. FCK Phoenix Manufacturing. I had a corporate speech writing job where the truly despotic chairman frequently asked me to go over work in the sauna and drove by my house in the middle of the night. And while on trips overseas, cornered me in numerous awkward situations and professed his love. I told HR it was untenable. They told me they'd like me to work as a freelancer, quietly, from home, for a year, at more than double my salary. So I exited corporate life, went to grad school, and cruised off to a new life. I thought it was pretty hilarious. Found out that they were withholding $1,000 per hour for over a year, adjusting tip share to make it look like normal pay. Corporate companies are good at setting up loopholes and hard to catch. After getting my back paycheck from a long heated investigation, I was promoted to manager and told not to say anything. On the 4th of July, we had a formal announcement to staff about my promotion. While they clapped, I took the American flag and duct taped it to our store's Darth Vader. I raised his arm with the flag, handed out notes I wrote the night before to employees about how to get their money, stood on a chair and rambled about corporate, then walked out dragging the chair behind me all dramatic like, and took it home. Many years ago I worked at Blockbuster Music, was one of my store's best employees. I could do the work of 4 people with little effort. I was so good I had my own customers who wouldn't show up if I wasn't working, and they even gave me tips. My last manager was a total jerk. He went out of his way to make things difficult, was verbally abusive and treated the younger kids like crap. One Saturday morning, I just rolled over and said FCK it. I'm not going back. The only reason I called in was because my buddy was manager on duty. We'd all talked about doing it. The manager had this policy of forcing quitters to pick up their last paycheck only from him. It's totally illegal. The younger kids fell for that crap. I just arranged for another manager on duty to get my check out of the vault when he wasn't there. Bill never got to reprimand or lecture me. Priceless. Had a panic attack 10x worse than any I had ever had before and thought I was actually going to die. Left in an ambulance. Never went back. I bet a lot of people think I died. This was not me but a friend of mine. Has twice now been in a situation where he either had beef with his manager or just grew so fed up with the BS that he would say he was going to lunch and then just never come back. I always thought it was funny. Extended lunch forever. Previous co-worker hid business cards everywhere, drawers, folders, under gym equipment, bottom of the ice maker, right before he left. I still find them every once in a while. 2 years later. Edit. I do not have not worked at Sears. Although the situation seemed to be incredibly similar. I was helping the IT guy install some AV equipment in the conference room recently and not only found a few taped under the big stone table, 2 years now, but there was one shoved inside an AV outlet. I didn't quit. So much as constructed my own dismissal. Was working in a horrible warehouse for a general cheap wank store, here in the UK. Better known as pound shops because everything costs roughly you a cute one. I was working illegally because I was underage, so it's not like I couldn't just bugger off and be done with it. However, decided to spend the vast majority of my shift on the shit till the manager asked me to leave. I was working in a kitchen at the time and it was about 2 hours before close. At this time I had been fed up with the place for some time. Management was lazy and never offered help. Well, one night a table of 35 came in and I was the only cook. When I asked my manager to help me get through the party's food, he told me, "No. I have to take care of the table and expo." Even though there were 2 servers taking the table. I waited till all the food rang in on the screens and dropped it on the grill and in the fryers. After that I bumped all the orders off the screen so they were all on the expo side and walked the FCK out. I know I FK'd that table up, but I don't care. The management should have treated us better. Not a hilarious way, but it's the best way I quit a job. I worked at a call center at my college for a semester. I called alumni of the college and asked them to donate money. My boss has this policy where no matter what, we should ask for a donation. We had a whole speech we would say. Sometimes you would get cut off. Other times you'd be hung up on. But sometimes people would listen and donate or just politely decline. One call I had. A lady listened politely and didn't cut me off at all. After listening to my speech, she said, "I would love to donate. But I recently found out that I have cancer. And have to worry about that." My immediate reaction was to say how sorry I was and hope it all works out for her. I gave her the best of luck and said goodbye. Directly after, my boss came over and asked why I didn't ask her for a donation. I was baffled. Apparently she was listening in on my call, which she did to everyone, and thought I should have asked her for at least a $50 donation. At that point I realized I did not want to work there anymore. I didn't walk out. But I never showed up again. No phone calls. No emails. I just stopped showing up. Never regretted that a day in my life. It was street Patty's day and my girlfriend friend and I were having drinks. I was already fed up with my boss. But when I got the text message saying we wouldn't be able to get our checks the following day, I'd had enough. This was 6 weeks of no paychecks and I snapped. I lived the American dream of calling my boss and going off on him and telling him I quit. It was so beautiful. He ended up telling my co-workers that he had to let me go. What an asshole. But my friend co-worker told everyone what really happened. Out of the 13 people who worked there, 4 more left within the next 2 weeks. I ended up getting another job 6 months later making double what he paid me. Not too hilarious, but I had a shitty high school job at a dry cleaners where a divorced, bitter, angry middle-aged man would yell at me in broken English every day. I was being worked from the second I got off school till close and even Saturday. The toxicity was affecting my relationships and school, so I asked for just one of those 6 days off per week to focus more on school. He told me, "You think you can just come in here and make your own schedule? If that's your attitude, you can just leave and not come back." Double quote. I told him, "Okay. Bye." With a huge grin on my face and walked out the door with him dumbfounded and my co-worker shocked, who quit the next week over the abuse too. I had a friend who got screwed over at the gym he worked at. I believe he was looking to get more hours. Basically, he was put in charge of training this new girl. Little did he know that this girl would be replacing him and taking up the hours he was specifically promised. So, if I remember correctly, he not only shredded his ID the day he found out, but also took a Gatorade bottle and spiked the motherfucker at the glass double doors of the gym before he left for good.